Howdy and welcome back. Today we're going to be finishing up our game with doing a little bit of polish just to clean up some components and tell y'all what few things are left for y'all to handle to complete our game. So again, for our platformer, one of the components that might be relevant is to have some type of mechanic to create full screen. So here in our obj_game, this thing that exists everywhere, since it is persistent and we have it in the first room. In order for us to conveniently flip between full screen and not full screen, we only need to add in a couple lines of code. So we can actually have a key down. In my case, if the player presses, I'm going to do Z. So Z, again, you can pick anything. Toggle full screen. And so to toggle full screen, I'm just going to have check if keyboard underscore check VK underscore control. So they need to do control Z, and that will open up or toggle full screen for our game. Window underscore set underscore full screen. If it is not, window underscore get underscore full screen. So it just checks what is its current status. Is it full screen? If it is, make it not full screen. If it isn't full screen, make it full screen. That's all this little chunk of code does, and this allows us to toggle this back and forth at any point in the game, which is fairly convenient for us to maximize the view on our game. Then here, under slide transition, I'm going to add in a similar check if keyboard underscore check VK underscore control. Throw this inside there. So if we've selected the control, then I want to do a full game restart. Slide transition mode dot game restart. It doesn't matter the room that it goes to because I don't think it actually looks at that argument. So if we're holding a control tab, it does that. Otherwise, else, it's a normal restart. So now I can do a full game restart or just an individual room restart. I can toggle full screen by pressing and doing Control Z. And that allows us to do full screen. Fairly quick and simple, just those 3 lines. In addition to this, one of the other components I wanted to address was having different enemies. So if we head over to our enemies, obj underscore enemies, the create event, I'm going to add in 3 lines of code here. Actually, I'll do it next to HP. So our image X scale is going to be equal to whatever the level is. Image Y scale is equal to whatever the level is. And our hit points is equal to 5 times the level. We're going to add a new variable in here called level. By default, it is 1. This is just going to be a real number, so you can like put fractions and whatnot. This will allow us to change the size and the health values of our enemy. And in fact, in our, let's see, step event, no. Yeah, I'll leave that there. And my gun, with my gun, I'm going to set level is equal to other dot level. This will now allow us to share this value. So the gun is going to keep the level, and that way we can toggle something to essentially set the difficulty of the various enemies we've got. Then in our draw enemies that are dead, the image X scale, this is going to be equal to X scale is equal to other dot level times. That way we make sure our dead enemy stays the same size. And the last part we need to update is in our script. In the sprite direction check, this will actually force our sprites back down to the wrong size, or the size of 1. We're going to actually have it be the absolute value of our image underscore X scale times the sign. That way, whatever size we currently are times the sign, and it'll be the correct direction and maintain the correct size. Because normally it's 1, and so 1 times anything is negligible by the absolute value. Otherwise, we could potentially, if we're looking in the other direction, it'll be -1 and it'll cause issues, which is why we're doing the absolute value of that. Now let's go back to the room testing just to show off how this works. Zoom in, and I'm going to go to the enemy layer and grab this specific enemy. Variables, he's got a gun, and I'm also going to make him 1.5 times as large. And I'm going to make this one variables. This guy is going to be 3 times as big. And oh, before I run it, we actually have to update the gun. No, it's the bullet. No, it's not the bullet. We handle, oh, the collisions are all handled on the player side. Hit by, so the bullet has to know how much damage it's going to do. So we have to actually make a variable with our bullet. So damage the target. This is going to be not to other dot damage. Well, I need to create this damage variable in our bullet. But with the ray gun, with our enemy gun, we actually get created the variable level. And here we create the bullets. With bullets, I have level, or have damage equal to other dot level, the gun's level, times 2. So now the bigger the enemy, the more damage that bullet will be. And there we go. Yes, so that should keep up. So let's go ahead and see this be put into action. So now we can have different size enemies, and they have correspondingly more damage output. Now, of course, you can break this up so that way it doesn't follow it exactly. Maybe you don't want it to be as hard. But you see the larger one, let's see. Oh no, control tab, there we go, restarts the game. So we have confirmed that the control tab works. Okay, now over here, control tab, testing. Okay, let me not get hit by this person. We see that they dealt a lot of damage to us. But let's go ahead and do Control Z, and we're now full screen. Okay, so let me try to survive long enough This may have been a bad idea, but you see that they are much larger. Because of the instructions on how we create the gun, it is also very large to correspond for that. And we try to survive. Ooh. But they are the correct size. They're running around. Everything is going well. These barricades, all that's keeping me alive. And they do have a lot of health because of their larger size. And there we go. And it stretches out. Oh, the Y value, we need to update the Y value since it is being squished a bit. But the X scale correctly was being updated. And so Control Z squishes it out of full screen. Control Tab lets us exit. And so back to our enemy dead. No, it's in our enemy for the begin step. No. Yeah, begin step to draw the enemy. The X scale is that, but we also need to make the Y scale equal to that. Now it'll keep track of and appropriately scale to the correct size. Our enemies are the correct size based off of what we put for that value. By default, it's 1, so you won't see anything. The health increases, the amount of damage that they deal increases. All of that is correctly handled in here. Now, that wraps up having different enemies for different sizes and damage. Now, of course, if you wanted to have different sprites and different things, you can add in extra code that based off of a certain size, you can select a different sprite, or maybe you just make a completely separate object. It's up to you. It is, once again, your game. And finally, if you wanted to have a slow-mo effect, such as whenever the player dies, one thing you could do is here in OBJ player dead, whenever the dead player is created, the screen shakes and you can, this is kind of, there's other ways to do slow motion, but this is just a very quick and simple way. I'm going to set game speed _ FPS. This one line will drop the frames per second down to 15. Our game by default is doing 60, so this will be a quarter of the speed. So this adds a certain effect to that. But we need to make sure we reset it back to 60 frames, and we handle that in text death. Here, whenever we destroy the instance and restart the game, we need to make sure we do game _ set speed back to 60 frames per second. Game speed _ FPS. Yep. Now we correctly set the game speed to 60 frames right after the player has hit to close out the text of saying you died. And one last thing, just to make sure that this portion is correctly set up, I'm going to actually add a draw GUI here. And throw this in here. Override it so that way it doesn't do anything. And here we're going to draw it using draw GUI so that way it stays central to our screen. Let's see, everything looks good. Yeah. Now let's go ahead and check to see if this portion works. And so I'm moving this back over, Control Z to make it full screen. Control Z, wait, is it through? Okay, Control Z made it full screen. Jumped into here, let me get hit. So we see the game dramatically slows down, drops down. It states you died. This is correctly centered on the screen. Hit enter and we're back to the correct size. I get hit several times as these guys do a lot more damage. I go flying. You died. Again, stays centered on your screen. And then once again, it ends. But yeah, and so we now have some nice mechanics. In that case, I'm actually gonna fall off the screen, which is a different problem which causes issues. So maybe make sure that your room testing, let's zoom out of go to the walls layer, add walls, and make sure that there is actually something to keep you inside the room. In fact, you can just stretch the wall out. And that should avoid it being too problematic. In fact, you probably should have just a wall across the entire place, as this will avoid any weird issues where the bullet goes continuously flying off into outer space, slowing down your game. With this, it'll block off and you'll be good. In case your player falls through and dies, they will actually correctly fall all the way down to this portion and vanish. Let's push it just a little bit off so that way they die off screen. I'm gonna remove a couple of these spots and run it just to demonstrate that this at least covers that portion. But that'll wrap up all of the polish that you can do to your game. Again, there's more things you can do, such as add sound. I'm not going to do that. We've covered that before in a previous activity. But as for our purposes here, we're good to go, and we have a nice, complete little game. And so if y'all have any questions or need anything from me, just let me know. Otherwise, that's all we've got. Everyone have a good one, and I'll see y'all next time.